In the Shadow of the Valley by Maggot Moshpit, Chapter 28. After all was said between Harimau and Rita, the night seemed to settle into a relieved calm. They sat separately now, not saying anything. Harimau looked up at the second sun as it dipped into the water. He glanced over at Rita, who had her eyes closed as she let the breeze ruffle her fur. He took the opportunity to study her face.
You look beautiful.
She opened her eyes.
What was that? You were whispering.
He flushed red.
Well, I was just saying how beautiful the view is.
Yes, it is quite something.
Her voice trailed off, and she got a pensive look on her face. Harimau leaned forward.
What is it?
She jumped.
Oh! I just remembered something important.
What?
I need to find Garth.
I'm coming with you.
Rita scrambled up and climbed off the roof. Harimau jumped off easily. They searched below deck, where everyone was settling down to sleep, in the empty armory, and on the beach, where Al and Pill were still working. He was nowhere to be found. They both returned to the deck, where they sat on the railing, at a loss. Rita looked worried.
I hope he's not gone and done something rash.
We'll find him. There's nowhere to go. Why exactly do you need to find him?
Rita stared at the deck planks.
He was the one who told me my father didn't survive. I thought he was lying at first. I yelled at him.
You mean he told the truth for once?
Yeah.
So that's...
Harimau didn't finish his sentence. Instead, he just folded his paws in front of his face. There was a cough from a few feet away that caused both of them to jump.
Excuse me, but are you two looking for someone?
The two looked over to where a man sat against the rail. His fur was the same color as the wood, so he was difficult to detect. They stood and walked over. The man didn't seem to be in great health, but he spoke in a strong voice anyway.
I saw a fellow acting strangely earlier. Short fellow, ruggedly handsome.
Rita leaned forward.
That's him! Where did he go?
The man cocked his head towards the sea.
Stole a boat and sailed away. Don't know where he expects to go in that thing. Weather won't be kind out in the deep waters.
Rita straightened up and dashed back to the edge of the boat, facing the open water.
Damn it!
Harimau was next to her, squinting into the horizon.
I think I see a speck. Could be something, could not.
Rita cupped her paws and yelled at the top of her lungs. This was not a wise thing to do, as then she doubled over in pain.
Rita, you shouldn't be shouting.
He helped her straighten up, and she grabbed the rail for support.
Let me try.
He cupped his paws and bellowed.
Garth! Come back here!
What's all that shouting?
A bleary-eyed arbalist climbed out from below decks.
We're trying to sleep.
Garth stole a boat and sailed out there. We're trying to see if we can get him back.
Arbalist stood next to them and peered at the tiny dot.
He won't hear you at this distance. Best forget about it.
He shambled back to the door and disappeared. Rita looked at Harimau beseechingly.
We have to do something! He could capsize!
Harimau looked to the sea and back at Rita.
I don't know if we can do anything but hope. The sea looks calm for now, at least.
Maybe we could catch up with him?
He shook his head.
By the time we're ready to sail, he'll be long gone.
Don't say it like that!
That's not what I meant.
They watched as he slowly got smaller and smaller. Harimau put his paw on Rita's shoulder.
Don't feel guilty. This too is my fault.
He turned and walked towards the lower deck. She stayed for a while at the rail and watched Garth disappear. She yawned and realized how dead tired she was.
Be safe, Garth,
she whispered before heading below decks. Everyone was asleep. She located a blanket and looked around for a spot. She found one next to Harimau. He was asleep already. If she didn't know any better, she would have thought that he had saved her that spot. When the regent awoke that morning, he knew it was going to be an important day. He pulled himself up and winced. His arm was going numb, and he knew that wasn't a good sign. He'd see a doctor after he cleared up this whole mess. He walked over to his table and forked down some food, then crashed out of his room, awakening the guards, who quickly stood to attention.
Bring me my commander, and Orly.
He slammed his door and retreated to his room, refining the details of his plans. Halen awoke to find himself covered in sweat, but feeling much stronger than the previous day. He sat up and tasted the air. His tongue was as dry as paper, so he grabbed and gulped down a nearby pot of water. The sound alerted the apothecary to his awoken state. She walked over.
Awake, are we? Can you stand?
He swung his legs off the bed and put some pressure on them. They felt weak and springy.
I think so.
She helped him up, walking him around the room a few times. She let go of him, and he stood on his own, wobbling.
Thanks.
She led him to the door.
The regent said he wanted you to return to town as soon as you can walk, so out you go.
He nodded, following the guard back to the front gates. As he returned to town, the guard hurried up the stairs. He arrived at the regent's door at the same time that Orly did. After defeating Cole in the Ardennes woodlands, she remained in Frostblight by the regent's request. Her army, however, had moved on. She glared at the man.
What do you want?
He pointed to the door.
The regent instructed me to tell.
Well, don't keep him waiting.
The guard nodded quickly and pushed the door open. Orly followed him in and leaned against the wall as he approached the regent's chair.
Sir, Halen just returned to town.
He stood.
Good. Get back to work. Orly, where's the commander?
The guard scurried out as Orly shrugged.
Don't know. The soldier you sent was looking for him after I got word.
Well, we can't start without him. Go!
The door swung open, and the commander stepped through. It seemed his job was occupied by a different person each month, as the regent got bored of whoever had the job at the time. This one was appointed the other day, and he threw a sharp salute.
Sir.
Well, now that we're all here, we can begin. We're going to be here for a while, so get comfortable. First, Commander, gather up all the townsfolk in the central square.
Marten crouched next to Al as he stared at the repaired hull. The morning mists swirled around them, and the sounds of people breaking fast wafted from the ship. Al grunted.
I'm a bit worried over this.
Looks all right to me.
He reached out a claw and scraped it against the golden surface of the new hull segment.
But the wood shrank more than I anticipated. I had to put more sap on than I like. It's liable to dissolve.
He stood.
I don't know what pill put in this stuff to make it so sticky. It might be fine, who knows?
We'll have to risk it.
Al nodded and grabbed the rope ladder.
All right, better cast off then. We're overstaying our invitation.
Marten nodded and climbed after him. He looked around for Harimau, who would be a huge help in pushing the ship off into the water, but found Bronze instead. He clapped him on the back.
Bronze, you better get going. We're about to leave.
I'm not going.
What? What changed your mind?
Elder Laurel did. I was forbidden from staying.
Marten frowned.
Is that so? What will you do now?
Bronze looked around at all the excitement.
I'll stay with you, I suppose.
We could try and find you a different place.
He shook his head distractedly.
No, I'm staying here.
Okay. It'll be dangerous. Probably bloody.
I know.
Marten patted him on the shoulder.
All right. Do you know where Harimau is?
Bronze gestured towards the door.
You might have to pry him from his sleeping companion, but he's below decks.
Oh. Should I wait?
I don't think so. It's already late morning.
All right.
Bronze nodded as Marten went below decks. He had no trouble finding Harimau, as he was now standing and no longer entangled with anyone. He looked disoriented.
If you want to help push, meet me on the beach.
He glanced over.
Huh? Ah, yes, of course.
In a few minutes, everything was in place. As many ladders as they could find hung from the ship, and 3 rows of rowers, for the first time in a long time, were eager to start rowing. 20 people looked up at the massive hull of the beached ship. Harimau was center stage. Kull jumped up and down to be seen by all.
On my mark! Luck of Denoka to all of you! Mark!
There was a mighty roar as the line of former slaves rammed the ship with all their might at once. People on board fell over at the sudden jolt. Cull yelled to Civvy as they pushed side by side, step by step.
We're doing it! Yeah! Whoops!
In a few seconds, the ship launched into the deep waters with a cheer. There was a mad scramble to get aboard before the ship got too far out, but the rowers kept it in place, and no one was left behind. Marten did not do any pushing, and he was glad he didn't, as wet body after wet body climbed on deck. They quickly shuffled below to find something to dry off with. Pill appeared from nowhere and tugged on Marten's sleeve.
Get up here!
He was about to ask what he was talking about when Pill darted towards the cabin and jumped a few times on the top step. Marten followed him. The cabin was occupied by a loose collection of people who looked like they had no idea what they were doing. Pill sighed.
I tried appointing a crew, but most of the strong altogether types were needed for rowing.
Rita and Petal were looking over some maps, while Arbalest watched the newly appointed wheelmen trying to figure out where they were supposed to stand. Marten held up a claw.
I have a solution for you.
In a minute, he was below decks, walking down the rows. He spotted a wolf.
Ace, what are you doing here?
I'm rowing. What does it look like?
It just so happens we need some leadership topside.
Congratulations, Marten. Command us well.
Don't typecast me as the leader type just because I'm old.
You're a better leader than me.
You've never tried it really. If you can keep an audience of women captive with your charisma, you can command this ship.
He stopped rowing.
You really think so?
Marten nodded.
I do. I know we're going to my hometown to save my people. But these people trust you.
I suppose there's no avoiding it, is there?
Nope.
He climbed down from the oar.
There are more people rowing on my side anyway. Alright, let's go.
The cabin was more disorganized than it was before. Pill was fiddling with something on the wall, while Rita and Petal had given up trying to decipher the charts. Marten gestured towards the center of the room.
You've got your work cut out for you.
Ace gulped.
Alright.
He walked to the center of the room.
Could I get your attention, please?
No one looked around. Not wanting to wait, he cupped his paws around his mouth.
Hey!
Instant silence.
That's better.
He turned to Pill.
Pill, we're trying to get to Frostblight. Since we couldn't sail during the night, we had to go during the day. Please explain how we can do that.
Pill took center stage.
We follow the blue sun, of course.
He threw open the roof shutter and let the pinhole projection of the two suns land on the compass. He thrust a finger towards the bluer of the two suns.
According to Marten, Frostblight is east from here. The blue sun always points east. Any child could tell you that.
Ace strode over to the wheels.
You 6, start turning to the right.
The wheel spinners had no unity and couldn't get into step. One was pushing the wrong way. Ace shook his head.
Stop, stop!
They looked towards him guiltily. One shrugged. Ace thought for a moment. He pointed to the wheel.
First, I think they're all connected. That way when everyone pushes in unison, the act of turning is effortless. You!
He pointed to the closest wheelman.
You're gonna be the head of this lot.
The woman nodded sheepishly.
All right.
When she counts to 3, all of you steer to the right. My right.
He pointed, just in case he wasn't clear.
When I say, reset the wheel.
Marten interjected.
There's a mark on the wheel to show which way is up.
Ace gave them a minute to get situated, then he nodded to the woman.
Go.
She nodded quickly, then looked over at the others.
All right. 1, 2, 3.
With a mighty heave, they began turning the wheel. Ace nearly lost his balance, and Pill watched the compass intently. It began to rotate, not turning with the ship. Once the blue sun was almost touching the east point, he waved his arms around.
All right, stop, stop!
They righted the wheel again. Pill struck a pose.
Good, we're on course. Ace, I think I found something useful over here.
Pill led him to the wall he was fiddling with earlier.
Look at this thing.
It looked like a cup jutting out of the wall. Rita came over and looked too.
Strange thing to have on a wall.
Pill put his mouth to it.
It echoes a little when I speak into it.
Rita furrowed her brow.
Wait a minute. I remember seeing...
She jumped.
Oh, I'll be right back.
She ran out of the room. Ace shrugged and looked back at the cup.
How deep is it?
I tried tossing a couple pebbles into it. It goes pretty...
Hey!
They jumped back as Rita's voice emanated from the cylinder. Her voice was tinny.
It's a communication device,
she said. Pill nodded.
Of course! Why didn't I think of that?
Ace spoke into the tube.
You stayed down there in case we need to give the rowers orders. You've just been appointed second in command.
Rita couldn't help the feeling of pride in her chest. General Cole never let her have any responsibility, even though she was the general's daughter. After having that thought, though, she no longer relished the position. She came out of the little room and looked down the rows of rowers. Harimau waved. She waved back. Petal tugged on Marten's shirt to get his attention. He glanced over.
Yes?
I need your help with something.
Yes?
She let him out on deck. People were milling about.
Well, we've been changing into the felines' old soldier uniforms, but they lack something.
Marten didn't want to admit he never noticed that everyone had slowly been putting on the feline tunics. Some even sported the splint mail that was also kept in the armory.
Like what? A symbol?
Yeah, something to distinguish us.
Let's see what we have.
Marten thought that it was a good idea. It would give the group a sense of unity. They headed into the armory, where Kethresh was practicing on a training dummy. She looked over.
Just the man I wanted to see.
The glint in her eye made Marten uneasy. She walked up to him and thrust a paw in his cloak. She drew his sword.
I need to teach you how to use this.
I'm a little busy.
She gave the blade a few swings. She made it look very graceful.
The way you flung that thing around when we were boarding this ship was pitiful. You may make a living making these, but you've clearly never used one.
She held the blade in both paws.
Though, I must say, this is a very finely crafted blade. It's keener than mine, and showing no signs of getting duller.
Petal rifled through the remaining tunics before finding a pile of discarded feline symbols. Marten nodded. He found pride in his work, but he was used to skilled swordsmen, and women, telling him how excellent his craftsmanship was. He nodded.
This was one of my earlier pieces. The order was for 10. I made 11, and snuck this into my house. This blade is 10 years old, been sharpened a few times, and never used in combat until now.
She passed it back to him.
You'll need to put it to good use, especially in the next few days.
You're right. Petal?
She looked up.
You go ahead and swing those around. I think I have an idea.
Kethresh shook her head.
You're holding it all wrong. Like this.
She held her blade with one paw to demonstrate. Her sword was clearly meant to be wielded with two paws, and Marten was impressed with her strength. Marten's sword was single-pawed. For the next half hour, Marten received a crash course in swordsmanship. He, of course, knew some things already, but there was a great deal of nuance he wasn't expecting. Kethresh stabbed her sword into the deck planks and leaned on it.
Take a break.
He collapsed onto the floor.
You know how old I am. I'm not as rowdy as I used to be.
She laughed. Petal clapped.
A good effort, I say. I learned something, too. I think we should get everyone in here and teach them to fight.
Kethresh grinned.
My blade instructor would be proud to know I'm following his footsteps.
Marten looked around the room.
We don't have that many blades, though.
Kethresh took a quick inventory of the weapons they had available.
We have a variety here, though. Bows, mostly crossbows, pikes, short spears, shields, and thrusting swords, all built light.
Marten saw a light in Kethresh's eye that he didn't recognize. She grinned.
Well, I don't know how we'll get everyone together, but I think I can teach us to be an army.
They can't stop rowing. We're only on one sail, and the wind is unfavorable.
We'll have to wait until the wind stops or moves east. One sail will move us some.
Petal held up a few feline symbols.
In the meantime, you two can help me make these into our own brand.
Marten took one. She had modified it by cutting off the bottom of the tree with a dagger. Regularly, the La Roja symbol was an upside-down tree with its roots up to the sky. With this modification, it was only a trunk and the top of the tree embedded in the earth, which was represented by brown silk. This new patch was simply a normal, rootless tree on a brown background. The regent struck a dramatic pose.
And then he'll give himself up. Whoever it is. Like I don't already know. It'll be more fun this way.
Orly and the commander exchanged glances.
That's...
The commander began.
Brilliantly cruel.
Orly finished.